If you're watching this video, that means you found the UXR Minds podcast channel. If you haven't done so already, remember to like, but also to subscribe to this channel to get access to exclusive interviews with UX research and UX design leaders, as well as access to workshops and other events such as webinars, where we'll dissect UX research skills, methodologies, as well as ways to leverage your skills to forge ahead in your UXR career. I know what it's like to try and find that first job, so make sure you follow us to get access to all these tips and hints and just exclusive content from leaders within the field. So remember to hit that subscribe button, otherwise you're missing out. Now enjoy this video. This episode is brought to you by our awesome friends of the podcast, Drillbit Labs. Run by co-founders Lawson Pybus and Thomas Stokes, Drillbit Labs is a leading UX research and digital strategy consulting firm. They work side by side with UX and product design leaders to elevate their digital strategy, delight their users, and outperform business goals. If you're interested in partnering with them, reach out to them via their website, drillbitlabs.com, or ping them at info@drillbitlabs.com. Okay, so I'd like to welcome all of our listeners to another episode of the UXR Minds podcast. And before we do get into this episode, I just want to remind all of our wonderful listeners that if you are listening to this on, well, you will for sure be listening to this on any of the podcast platforms. If you could give us a follow and also give us a rating, I hope it's a 5-star rating. If not, be honest. I like honesty. It's important. I'm a researcher, so I need honesty. And then at least I know that I'm providing content that is worthy of a rating. So today we have a very interesting guest on, Dr. Elena Hill-Artamonova, who is a UX research specialist. So super happy to have you on.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
No problem at all. Can I call you Elena for the rest of the podcast?
Yes,
do you want to be
okay, yes, no formalities yet.
I can call you doctor, but
no, Elena is great.
Cool, excellent. So you've got a really interesting background, and this is one reason why you're here on the podcast today. And I'm sure your story is going to really resonate with our listeners. But maybe before we do go into that background, maybe you could just explain what you're doing now, because mentioned before you're a UX research specialist. What does that entail? How did you arrive to that role?
Sure. So I'm UX research specialist at the moment, and I've recently started my new job, which we can get into absolutely later on. But so far it's been amazing. And what I do is specialize basically in user research. So I do user interviews, usability testing, A/B testing, all sorts of UX kind of little nuances. And I work for a big corporation at the moment, which is definitely a learning curve for myself, because previously I worked in scale up, and before that government organization, consulting agency, and of course academia. So it's definitely a learning curve, but so far it's been great, and I'm really enjoying it. It's nice to be back at work after maternity leave. That's for sure.
I can imagine. Also, congratulations on the baby. And that's also interesting because we did kind of get in touch over your situation of obviously looking for a job, and that's how we kind of connected, and obviously we're able to talk about our own personal experiences around looking for a job, etc. So I think that's also going to be good for our listeners. But you mentioned there just now that, is this one of your first experiences in kind of a corporate environment or like a big organization?
Yes, that's right. So I've never worked in a company this size before.
Okay.
So there's loads of teams. There's a big learning curve, but honestly, it's really interesting, and it's so different to everywhere I was before. It's definitely something that is amazing. Honestly, I never thought I would enjoy it as much as I do at the moment.
Wow, that's awesome. What are the differences that you've noticed between this current style of organization compared to, you mentioned before, like startups or scale-ups or maybe small organizations? Obviously, academia, maybe we can go into that in a bit more detail later, but just at the moment, these comparisons, what do you notice?
I think the biggest difference is the presence of another researcher.
That's always welcomed.
Absolutely. I currently work with an amazing team. So my team consists of several people, and I work closely with another UX research specialist. And that's the biggest difference for me. It's so nice to have someone to talk to. In my
Mm.
previous role, I was the only user researcher,
Yeah.
and sometimes it was a struggle because you
Yeah.
have a lot of projects ongoing and you're trying to help the team, because I see UX research role as so to speak, a service role. So you help
Mm.
other teams, you help
Yeah,
them,
absolutely.
you create this piece of research and you present it to, let's say, the design team, the engineering,
Mm.
product managers, etc. And
Mm.
you kind of trying to help them understand the product, understand your users, and how to create best possible solutions for them. And
Mm.
what it's nice to have another person within the team is that you can share those experiences, you can discuss
Yeah.
projects, and you can actually go into far more details and create something so much better than you
Mm.
would on your own. I believe so.
Yeah,
Because we all
absolutely.
come, yeah, as you know yourself, we all come into UX from such a variety of backgrounds, and
Yeah.
every single person brings something so different to the project. And I
Mm.
think having another person from completely different background is honestly a pot of gold for me. But
Yeah.
that's the biggest difference
No,
so
no,
far.
absolutely.
And also, the fact that you produce little bits and pieces of research at the moment, and you get involved from so many different teams. So I think the digital team where I am at the moment is 120 people, something like
Oh
that.
wow. It's
It's a big
big team.
team, and very big team. And the team before that, where I worked, I think it was about 120 people altogether.
Oh.
The
Okay,
company.
so
So you
not
can,
just one
yeah, you
team.
can understand the difference.
Wow.
So honestly, it's definitely a learning curve, but it is
Mm.
one that I am glad to kind of take on as a challenge.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. That's really interesting. Thanks for going into detail around that as well. But yeah, I completely like agree with that as well. Like, I'd say most of my roles I've been the only UX research. I've had one where we had a small team. There was three of us, and yeah, that's one thing that I've always said. Like, and also I've had many guests on who said the same, that UX research is often lumped with UX designers and just, okay, UX, so obviously they go with UX design, or just get thrown into the product team. But UX research can be so beneficial and useful for all areas of the business. And the insights that we discover and find out from our users can be beneficial for sales, for business, for marketing, or so yeah, it's nice you bring that up as well. And if anyone is listening and like is a researcher or starting to be a researcher, look at also how you can bring value to these other departments in what you're learning, and try to think outside of just UX design, because there is a lot more that research can offer. So you mentioned briefly before that you were in academia. So let's go right back to baby Elena. So how did that all come about? So you, I imagined you entered the academia world. So how did that come about? And then this transition to UX, like what made you want to join the UX, the crazy UXR world?
It's definitely a long journey coming, that's for sure. So my first degree was in anthropology. So
Okay,
I did
very
social
interesting.
anthropology as my first degree. Yep,
Mm,
absolutely, really enjoyed it. It was really interesting. However, I did not know what I wanted to do with my life. I'll be honest with you.
okay.
That's well, you're 20 years old. We like, do you know what I mean? You just want to kind of enjoy your life a little bit and kind of
Absolutely.
create a career path for yourself. But
Yeah.
anthropology was, I didn't know how to utilize that. And
Mm,
what I did simultaneously as my anthropology degree was actually a psychology degree as well,
hmm.
which I really enjoyed. And I thought psychology was something I would like to pursue further. Hence why I did my master's in psychology, and then I did my
Okay.
PhD in psychology and statistics.
Well,
And I like, that's kind of my brief overview of my academic
yeah.
journey. But throughout the whole of that, it's I didn't I what I didn't really enjoy about academic world personally is the fact that I was creating research or I was publishing papers, and I never see the end of it. I've never
Mm,
seen it change someone's life. I've never seen it
okay.
make someone's life better or
Mm,
impact something. And
mm.
apart from when I did my PhD, of course, you kind of get that little bit of a, goosebump moment when they say, "Oh, you expanded the boundaries of human knowledge." And yes, it does feel amazing to do so.
Yeah.
However, will I ever see the end? of prejudice or aggression in my lifetime, because that's what my research was focused on. I strongly
Okay.
doubt that.
Yeah, me
I
too.
would love to, but I strongly doubt that. I
Yeah.
don't think my son is going to see the end of it either.
Mm.
However, as amazing as it was, I just kept getting frustrated, really, really frustrated. And my husband at the time recommended for me to, well, my boyfriend at the time, not my husband, recommended for me to go into industry and just to have a
Okay.
look at industry experience. So I'd done lecturing throughout my PhD, and I did enjoy sharing the knowledge that I obtained through the years and years of training and practicing and learning. However, it was just not fulfilling enough. And after which I thought my husband recommended for me to go into industry and see how I can do in the industry. And I thought, you know what? Why not? I'll give it a go. What do I have to lose? At that time, what do I have to lose?
Sure.
And it was my first job was actually working for Office of National Statistics. Well, my first official job after my PhD was working for Office of National Statistics. And I really enjoyed that. However, what I didn't like was the bureaucracy behind everything. So Office of National Statistics is an amazing organization. However, they have a lot of data that they don't utilize as well.
Okay.
And so they produced these pieces of research, and I worked on COVID test and trace surveys and student engagement during COVID pandemic. So it's quite big pieces of surveys and research that I was doing. However, the data that I was producing was really good, but I think it was wasteful in the sense that they didn't do much more than for a publication for each week, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I thought again, I don't think I want to do this long term. And after that, I went into consulting environment, and I found it really interesting, but I would say very stressful and competitive, not in the way I was imagining to be. And I know it is stressful, and a lot of people have stresses in their job, but that was something different. I didn't know how can I progress, what can I do further to make the research better or research department better, and I kind of struggled a little bit with that. And one of my friends at the time recommended for me to have a look. She's actually one of my best friends, and we met in the consulting work that I was doing. And she said, have a look at UX jobs. And I was like, what is UX?
We've all had that question. What is UX?
Isn't it? It's like everyone's like, what is UX? I've never heard of it.
Epiphany.
Yeah. Definitely a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And I started looking at the UX jobs, and I started understanding that actually what UX researchers produce affects businesses or affects people. Or, for example, one of the things I used to do was do research for accessibility. So that actually impacts someone's life. Being able to look at the website and actually being able to shop on it for someone with limited accessibility or like limited needs, it's amazing. And honestly, that's I think what swayed me to go into UX was the fact that I can actually influence someone or someone's life or business decision with my research. So it wouldn't just go into the air, and I've never seen the end of it. Since then, every project I've ever done, I always kind of see it through to the end. And I think that's what gives me the best job satisfaction I can think of.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But yeah, that's kind of my journey so far.
That's really interesting. So for me, just to understand that, so it was more for UX, the thing that appealed to you was the impact that you can have on people's lives, like the real, and you can see the results of that impact as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's really awesome.
I always say to people that at the moment, what I also do on the side is I volunteer my research skills as a user researcher to companies or organizations who can't afford to hire a UX researcher, but they still need those people to look at the websites, or they need to look at their platforms or whatever it is. And that actually is really rewarding. I was volunteering for a few months at Criminal Justice Hub.
Okay.
which was amazing. And I really hope I want to go back to it. But at the moment, it's just a lot with a new job and the
Sure.
baby
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. A
and
baby and a
volunteering is
job is already enough, and a husband as well.
yeah. Oh yeah,
We need
absolutely.
luck
And
enough as well.
oh, absolutely. And two dogs as well, two beagles.
Oh, dude, I was
Definitely
gonna
enough.
say, yeah, that's more than enough. Especially as well that you're starting a new job, so getting to grips with
Absolutely.
that, yeah, it's more than enough. But that's really nice as well that you also mentioned the volunteering. I don't know if you've seen also my in other episodes and also my LinkedIn. Like, I'm a big advocate for volunteering, especially early on in your career, because it can give you those opportunities to learn and grow, have something on your CV, but also have an impact as well. Not just because
Absolutely.
it is beneficial maybe to do these like case studies or put something together, something you're passionate about. But if it's not based on a real life project, it can be hard to first of all have the motivation from my point of view, and also see the results of that research and the impact it can have. If you're working on a real life, I don't know, for a non-profit or a charity or something, you're learning, but also you can see the impact, and also a potential employer can go and look at the work you've done. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for volunteering. So it's nice you brought that out. Just out of interest, how did you find those volunteer opportunities? Just for any listeners that may be
Sure.
interested.
I looked at a lot of websites. So I've been volunteering throughout my lifetime, pretty much at this point.
Mm,
So I used to volunteer at British Red Cross. I
okay.
volunteered at Ten of Us Charity, which is a cancer charity in Wales, when I did my undergraduate
Okay.
degree. And obviously now I volunteered at Criminal Justice Hub. And the way I found the majority of those opportunities is either LinkedIn. So Criminal Justice Hub was LinkedIn. Um, Ten of Us Charity, I literally went into like a couple of shops, emailed them on the website and said, would you like a volunteer? I can help with research. I can do this. I can
Mm,
create service for you, whatever you need. Also, don't underestimate actually emailing careers
yeah.
at whatever charity you would like to volunteer, like I did with British Red Cross. My mother-in-law helped me in that sense. She was like, oh, we actually have a volunteering position. Why don't you email them and see if they will
Mm,
like someone with your skills? And that's exactly what I did. And I volunteered for British Red Cross for a while. So don't underestimate the power of actually emailing careers and
mm,
asking, I am so and so, I'm an undergrad, or I am really interested in helping create you a better website for yourself, or whatever it is.
mm,
And just email them and see what they can do for you. Because
yeah.
a lot of charities struggle to hire people who they actually
Yeah.
need. So if you come along with the skills that they need at that
Mm,
time, and especially if you're volunteering, it's free.
yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
they will most likely reach out back and say, yes, please, we
Mm,
need so and so, we need help with this. And those skills, it's actually one of my advice for early career researchers. Don't underestimate the power of volunteering, because
yeah.
I know it's really hard out there in terms of jobs and
Mm,
finding paid positions, internships,
mm,
apprenticeships, whatever it is. But it's always been a catch-22. I've struggled with that quite a bit. They
mm,
want someone with 10 years of experience for the
yeah.
roles that I've been applying, but also ridiculous amount of education, and you
Yeah.
need to be very young. And it's an absolute catch-22 all the time. So
Mm.
don't underestimate the power of volunteering. I highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. Yeah, me too. Like when I transitioned over, that's something that helped me get my first paid roles. Let's call them paid roles. Helped me get my first paid roles was all of my work done on the back of volunteering, because I had something to show in the interview. I could demonstrate my research skills, and also it gives you opportunity to learn how a team works. Because sometimes if you're just learning yourself at home, you're learning maybe, I don't know, the academics behind the methodologies on your own. Maybe you're doing a case study, like doing your own research, but then managing stakeholders or presenting that research, all of that, you miss those key skills. And maybe that might be what's holding you back from getting your first role, because maybe the interviewer or the hiring managers like really like you, but you're missing some key things that we need someone to do when they take
That's
this
right.
role. Instead, with the volunteering, that's what I was able to do. I eventually even managed a team, managed a research project from start to finish, presented the results to various stakeholders. So also like even handing over to engineers, things like that. So it gives you a lot of skill sets that otherwise you wouldn't be able to learn or to develop. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Okay, just maybe moving around this academic transition to UX again. What were the skills that you feel, because we spoke about this off air, off recording, off air. We're not so high level, off recording, about this transition that you experienced from research, academic research to UX research, and maybe sometimes the struggles that you had in the interviews to be understood. First of all, what were the skills that you feel you've been able to bring to UX that are relevant from academia to UX?
Okay, so honestly, I'm a strong believer that research is research.
Yeah.
Like you said, we spoke about this before. Research is research. All the skills that you acquire throughout your academic journey are transferable skills.
Mm,
It's one thing I learned coming from an academia into the industry is that I don't see myself at any disadvantage in the sense that I've done research for over a decade, realistically.
wow.
And coming into the industry and actually being able to use my skills as an interviewer, as
Mm,
my skills as a statistician, my skills as a psychologist, and my skills as an interpreter, translator, whatever it is, all the academia gave me all those foundational skills.
mm,
Now, when it comes to transferring them into industry, the biggest skill that I use, for example, at the moment, is the fact that I can conduct the interviews. I can open the
yeah.
interview. I can open those people up when they're interviewing them. I can get the
Mm,
most amount of information in the shortest amount of time. And that's what academia teaches you. When you do your degrees, for example, in anthropology, one of the projects that I've done was actually for my dissertation. I interviewed shamans in Siberia.
oh, wow.
It's so far away from UX, but it really helped me. I know it sounds really silly, but it really, really helped me to interview different people. I know how
Mm,
to approach different types of people. I know how to speak to them. I know how to make sure that I can open them up. I know how to, like I said, get the most amount of information in the least amount of time and in the weirdest scenarios, actually. I can interview people on the
yeah.
go. I can interview people online, offline, moderated, unmoderated, wherever it is. And this, I think, is one of the biggest skills I've learned coming from academia
Mm,
into the UX world. But also, it's time management. It's
mm,
honestly, when you're doing your PhD or when you're doing your master's or whatever it is, you have to plan out your time quite significantly
mm,
because during your PhD, no one is there to supervise you. Yes, you have
yeah.
your supervisors, but they're there just to guide you more than
Mm,
supervise you. You have to create your studies, you have to publish the studies, you have to write up 100,000 word thesis at the end of it.
goodness me.
So it's a very, very chunky piece of work that you have to spread out over 3 to 4 years, and you have to make sure that you do finish it. You have
Mm,
to, you have to plan out your time correctly to do so. And coming into the industry, I know exactly how to plan out research. So I
mm,
use a lot of, yes, I do use a lot of tools. I use mirror boards, I use Jira, etc. However, I know how to plan out my time. I know when I'm going into a research project, I know how long it's going to take. I know that there are going to be challenges. I'm anticipating those challenges and preparing them in advance.
mm,
And I've always said that in the interviews, that I believe everything is in preparation. And I think
yeah.
that's what academia taught me. The more you prepare, the better the
Yeah,
outcome will be
absolutely.
of your research project. It's simple as that.
Mm,
And I think that's those two are the most significant skills that I got, obviously, from academic world. But
mm,
also, what I honestly, I'm really bad at this because I forget to mention it half of the time at my interviews. Um, but the fact that I've applied for funding and scholarships and any money to conduct my research, and I
mm,
know how to manage a budget. And what people forget is that when you in academia, people forget that you can manage budget because they think you don't affect a business case, you don't affect money, you don't kind of manage any of it, but you do. Because once you
mm,
apply for things like European Research Council funding there, it's money that you need to manage and you need to make sure that your research stays within the budget and you
yeah.
don't go over the budget, under the budget. It has to be within the budget because then they
Mm,
won't give you enough money next year,
mm,
or they give you too much money that you can't manage, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's exactly in the industry. It's the same experience. You have to make sure that you stick within the budget. You have to make sure
Mm.
that you stick within the research budget.
Yeah.
It's getting the right teams involved, it's getting involved the right people, doing the prototypes, doing the correct research, the correct number of participants, and you have to manage all that.
Yeah.
And I think you shouldn't forget this, because you do a lot of work in academic environment that prepares you for the industry, but they just don't sell it as a preparation for industry, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, they want to keep you within the academic world,
Mm.
but you actually really well prepared for the industry. You just
Mm.
have to know how to transfer them. I think that's all it is. It's just making sure you know
Yeah.
how to transfer them.
Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. And about that transferring those skills. If someone is listening now and they're in academia, they're trying to transition, but they're struggling. I know you mentioned you had that issue as well. It's got an issue. What should they do? Like, how should they show that the skills that they have are relevant to the UXR field? Because, like you mentioned pre-recording, that you found it hard sometimes in the interviews that they say almost didn't trust that your skills from academia were going to be applicable in a UXR role. So how can someone overcome that hurdle? Maybe in an interview, or maybe in another aspect, if you know one.
To be honest, I get that all the time. Oh, you're coming from academia, and it sounds like it's a disadvantage,
Mm.
but actually it's not. The transferability of your skills between academic world and the industry is all about you showing the examples. So, for example, one of the things that I do like to use my PhD when I talk about the biggest research project I've ever done in my life. Obviously, now I have industry experience, I can talk about industry. But when I was getting my first jobs, I was talking about my PhD, because one of the questions they usually ask is, can you give us an example of the most complex project you've done to date, right? Research project you've done to date. And honestly, I use my PhD. I say within my PhD, when I conducted my PhD, I had to do several different studies that were looking at cross-cultural comparison, and I was looking at interviews, which allows me to gather qualitative data. I was looking at surveys, which allowed me to gather quantitative data. I can present those research projects to senior stakeholders who were my supervisors, and at the time when I completed my Viva were examiners, which are the senior stakeholders in your PhD, because they're doctors, professors, wherever they are. And it's, in a way, that's a stakeholder management. So you
Yeah,
present
yeah.
the research and you talk about something complex to people who are not actually in your field and who are not experts in that specific area that you're focusing
Yeah.
on. So you have to present those research findings in a way that is understandable to them, and that they can pass you, if that makes sense, with the Viva. So it's
Yeah.
like giving you a budget, or giving you a go ahead for that research project. So it's little things like this that you have to kind of take. I wouldn't say twist is probably the wrong word, but take it and kind of mold it into what you want it to be for
Yeah.
that specific job. And
Yeah.
I always like to say, just remember, research it's a skill, and we all acquire that skill very differently. I acquired it through academia. Someone else might acquire it through teaching, like yourself,
Yeah.
or someone else might acquire it for something else. I know people who come from a variety of backgrounds. I know people who come into UX for marketing. I know even a person who came from engineering, and it's
Yeah.
like, right, that's very interesting. And why is that? Because that we all have different types of research skills, but it
Yeah.
is research.
Exactly. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think you've mentioned it as well, and it's something that I always like to say, that because we all come from different backgrounds, because it's a new field, there are, I would say, probably 80% of UX researchers have transitioned into UXR. They've not started their career as a UX researcher. So we all bring a different element to the research process. And like you say, someone who comes from engineering might have that, I don't know, that more analytical eye for more, I don't know, technical things, because he's thinking, okay, how can this research transfer into, I don't know, in how we build this product? Someone that comes from education might look at it more from the user's journey, like the learning experience of learning the product, etc. So we all bring a different eye to it. And academia has also its advantages, like you mentioned, your whole background is research. You know how to prepare well a research study, how to recruit participants, and all of that brings something different to the table. So I think not what I take from this person is not undervaluing yourself. And if you do hit a few walls or obstacles through interviews where it's almost looked down upon that you're coming from academia, not to take it personally or that you're not going to make it as a UX researcher, that you are probably actually more valid than other UX researchers because you have that, like, let's say that hard grounding in research. It's like your whole, you just know research inside and out. So yeah, not to, that's what I take from it anyway.
I
I
agree.
don't know if that's
I
what you
think
wanted to.
no, absolutely. I think what also people forget is that throughout your academic journey, whatever you're doing, undergrad,
Mm,
postgrad, PhD, whatever it is, you're really, really encouraged to do conferences.
mm,
And that's one huge skill people completely
mm,
forget is that you can present a very complex project to a non-specialized audience.
mm,
And that's something UX research really values.
mm,
You able to translate amazing statistical findings or amazing qualitative findings, whatever it is, into such a distilled product, and you can show
mm,
it to people who are not in your field, who doesn't understand what you're talking
yes.
about, are still going to be interested in what you have to say. And I think that's one skill people forget about quite regularly
Mm,
when it comes to
yeah,
interviews, especially if you transition from academia into the industry.
sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I always say just don't, like yourself, don't undersell yourself because you
Yeah.
have so much value to bring. Every
Mm,
person has so much value to bring to UX research field. And yeah, that's why I think all of us are so like-minded in that sense, because we
yeah.
know we have a lot to bring to the table and we can help make a product or a platform
Mm,
or just to users experience better. And I think
yeah.
that's quite a nice way of looking at it.
Absolutely. No, no, I agree completely. I agree. Yeah. Thanks for bringing those points out. I think they're really useful for most of our listeners who are in that situation. So now we're probably coming to the end, towards the end of this episode. I just wanted to ask you if you were to kind of summarize, could be into a few sentences, like all of your experience and kind of put it into a nutshell as a piece of advice for someone who is listening. I don't want to put you on the spot. What would that be? How would you like to round up what we've discussed today?
I think I would say I have few advices for people who's
Mm,
transitioning, either transition from academia or early career researchers, whether you're just starting your journey. I would probably say, first of all, get yourself a mentor. So
mm,
find someone who you like as a researcher. So someone who you can relate to, someone who you would value, someone whose opinion you would value. And one of the things I've done was the University of Westminster mentorship program.
mm,
And a lot of students who come, they are interested in UX research field. And it's actually quite a nice way of showing them that it actually is rather than
yeah.
what they imagine it to be. So I highly recommend get yourself a mentor who
Okay.
can guide you at least through the beginning stages of your journey.
Mm,
And don't be scared to reach out to people. People actually, majority of the time, people like being reached out
yeah.
to. Majority of the time, people appreciate that you appreciate their research skills. So
Mm,
they're willing to share that.
yes.
Um, yeah, occasionally there's going to be bad apples,
Yes.
but
It's normal.
like everywhere. But majority of the people will be so happy to hear from
Yeah.
you. I think that's another piece of advice. And don't ever undervalue whatever you've done in your life because
Mm,
I struggled a lot with that, especially being dyslexic and having ADD. I
mm,
always struggled with undervaluing myself, and I used to go into
yeah.
interviews thinking, oh, "What can I do for them? What can I
Mm,
create or showcase, or how can I make myself better?" But actually, it's a two-way street.
yeah.
If you go into those interviews with, yes, you can do something for them, but what can they do for you?
Yeah.
How can they help you progress? How can they make you into a better person, better researcher, help you progress with your career, whatever it is? Just do not see it as, oh, I need this. It's more, what can they do for you as much
Yeah.
as what you do for them. So I think
Yeah.
those three kind of solid pieces of advice I can give to someone.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with all of them, especially the last one as well. It can be hard, especially when you're looking for your first job or you're in between jobs and times moving on. You've got bills to pay, got family. You're kind of, do I go back to my previous career? But yeah, I think that's important. Even if you are let's say, desperate. It's not a nice word to use, but we are. We want to earn, or we all want to earn a living. That, yeah, not to just take anything, but to see, okay, what am I giving to them, but also what they're giving to me, and not to lower yourself or your standards because that can actually do more harm than good to your career, your self-esteem, your skills, etc. So yeah, I think that's some sound advice, and yeah, thanks for sharing it.
To be honest, just one more thing I would add. I'm sure a lot of people, the market is awful at the moment for UX research, unfortunately. And I was in that position. I was, I wouldn't say desperate, but I was getting to the point where I was like, I am really struggling to find a job. And I'm someone who is with 10 years worth of experience in research and previous UX research jobs and academic world and PhDs and whatever it is. And I struggled a lot with finding a job. So don't ever think that it is you, because there was a couple of months where I thought, oh my God, I'm just not good enough for this. I'm not cut out for this. But it's not you. It is current market. And if you just keep going, and the right opportunity will come along, like it did for me. And I am very, very grateful to be where I am now. I work with great people. I have a great manager. So it's something will come along. You just have to keep going. And in the meantime, if you are really struggling, find yourself something else to do, like a volunteering or something that you keep sharpening your skills, something in the field that you where you want to be, but something that keeps sharpening your skills, and it will come in handy at those job interviews. It will come in handy when you come to updating your resume. So yeah, definitely keep going. Go to conferences, meet people as much as you possibly can. As someone who's quite introverted, that is always a struggle.
Yeah, I know the struggle.
Yeah, it's like I reached out to you because I saw your LinkedIn post, and I was like, I can really resonate with that. So do things like this. Try to get out of your shell as much as possible, and it will get better.
Exactly.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also a nice example. You reached out to me. This led one thing to another, and here we are. So you don't know what an outreach message might lead to. What you just don't know. And I'm introverted as well. Like, to do these sorts of things is like really against my nature, but it helps you grow as a person. And if you don't go out of your shell, you might always be kind of lagging behind, and you also won't have that confidence to then go into an interview or with that confidence, like, yeah, I'm worthy of this job. I can do this. I can get this role. If you do stay in your shell, you don't network, you don't go to conferences, you're always going to have that self-doubt because you're not exposed to people in the industry. You'll be just kind of lacking in that. So yeah, I think it's again a sound piece of advice. So thank you. And thank you for coming on today and sharing your experience. I think it will really, really help the listeners. And I think a lot of them are in a similar situation, from the ones that reached out to me as well. So thank you for taking the time to, because I know you're busy in a new job, a new mum. So thank you for taking the time and the energy to do that today.
No, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I do say, if anyone ever needs a helping hand or look over a resume, whatever it is, just reach out to me as well. I'm more than happy to help.
Absolutely, yeah. For our listeners, I'll tag Elena in all of the posts. So if you do want to reach out to her, as you've heard, you'll be happy to hear from me. So just click on the link, and obviously you'll get access to her. So thank you